At school, I've always been ignored, bullied, and treated as if I didn't exist. I was never accepted for who I am. I had no social life and was extremely unhappy. When I spoke to teachers about this, they did nothing. In grade 7, I wrote a poem about not being accepted for who I am and read it out loud in front of the entire school. People were moved to tears, but still, nothing was done. Just before going to high school, I stood in front of the entire school again and spoke about the psychological impacts bullying has and what Greenstone could do to stop it. I challenged the school to implement an initiative I started called I Stand Up, where the school would encourage people to stand up against bullying and recognize kids who stood up for others. Again, people were moved, but nothing was done. So, when you continue to be ignored, eventually you stop trying. My voice was not heard, and the only thing I could do was just smile and say, "I'm doing great, thank you." School was not a safe place for me. The only thing which made me feel better was music, but my musical creativity was not supported at school. So, I looked for ways to find music outside of school. I met amazing Indonesian musicians who gave me opportunities I could never even dream of. Then, I met Pete, a drummer from the UK who has worked with artists such as Amy Winehouse, Adele, and Jessie J. I also met Luke, who was the producer of George Michael and many others. Later, I met even more amazing musicians from the UK such as Omar, who is known as the founder of Neo Soul and has worked with artists such as Erykah Badu and Stevie Wonder. I stayed in touch with all of them, and it especially clicked with Pete. He was always there for me when I needed help with music or someone to talk to. Over the years, he became my best friend. But at school, I was still extremely unhappy, and it got worse every day. School was not a safe place for me. Even though I felt unsafe at school, I also felt really guilty when I was upset about that, because I knew that there are more than 420 million children living in war zones and conflict areas. They don't feel safe anywhere. When you look at this through the lens of the hierarchy of needs, you see how different our experiences are. The most crucial needs are at the bottom of the triangle, and in order to reach the highest part of the triangle, you need to have all the levels below. These children have no freedom, and over 50 million children living in war zones and conflict areas are unable to go to school. Children in war zones suffer from extremely high levels of toxic stress, and in Yemen alone, there are more than 1,200 children separated from their families. They have no sense of personal security. Furthermore, these children suffer from bad healthcare systems, dirty water, and no shelter. Starvation is used as a war tactic to try and force people to surrender. And this is what's left for these children. Nothing. Knowing that there are children who aren't even able to go to school and are suffering from a war that is out of their control made me feel like I had no right to be sad, stressed, or angry. So, 2 years ago, I decided to do something for these children, combining my love for music with a want to help, to make children feel safe. My plan was to make a song to raise money and awareness for children in war zones and conflict areas. But how can a 15-year-old girl nobody has ever heard of sing on this song alone and raise any awareness or money? I needed people who are well known. I wanted to make a song and record that song with different famous artists to raise money for an organization called War Child, which helps children in war zones and conflict areas. War Child has won many transparency awards, and last year they helped more than 375,000 children in countries such as Sudan, Colombia, Afghanistan, Yemen, and more. Straight away, I emailed back and forth with War Child Holland and War Child UK. Since I wanted really well-known artists to sing and play on this song, and since the profits would go to War Child, I needed legal advice on how to set this all up correctly. They were very supportive of my idea, but they didn't have the manpower to help me. That didn't stop me. I reached out to a lawyer in the UK who has worked for Sony Music. I explained my project and he sent me a very kind response back. Not only did he give me some legal advice, but he was also willing to help me reach out to some of the artists he had connections to, such as Sam Smith, the global ambassador of War Child. We stayed in touch and exchanged emails almost every week. After calling my friends in the UK to tell them about my project, they were very enthusiastic. Pete invited me to come to London to record my song in his studio. This was something to really look forward to, but it was still a very long way ahead, and I had to focus on my current steps. I had no budget, almost no experience, and I did not have a big network. So I started contacting singers and musicians. Often there was no response, and if there was, mostly people said that they didn't have the time or couldn't commit to a project at the moment. But I wasn't going to let that bring me down. Whilst I continued reaching out, I started working on the lyrics of my song. After a lot of deleting and starting over again, finally there were lyrics on my piece of paper that I was happy with. Once the lyrics were done, I started playing around with melodies and chords on my piano and guitar, and later recorded the vocals and the basic outline of the music. Then I sent it over to Pete, Luke, and Omar. They really liked my demo and told me that they thought that the lyrics had a powerful message. Slowly, things were starting to come together. I was getting in touch with more and more amazing musicians, and it was finally starting to come together. And things were finally starting to come together. This was when I realized that I had to step the quality of my demo up a notch before sending it out to these professional musicians. If I had a good quality demo, it might make them more willing to help me. Via someone I knew, I got the email address of a producer from the UK living in Bali. I sent him an email explaining my project and asked him if he would like to help me connect to some of the artists he had worked with, since he had worked with artists such as Sting. I got a very short email back. Hi Britt. I was with Pete recently at Abbey Road Studios, and he told me a lot about you. I'd love to meet up when I'm back in Bali. Once he was in Bali, I went to his studio and we worked on my demo. In the beginning of March, I finally arrived in London. I was so excited. This is the place I belong. With my friends around me, finally being accepted for who I am. I was happy and I felt safe. The first week, Pete invited me to a rehearsal with one of the best jazz singers in the UK. The rehearsal studio turned out to be the studio where Amy Winehouse always rehearsed. I walked in, and I saw all these records, CDs, and thank you letters from Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Tina Turner, Elton John, and so many artists who I've always looked up to. During the rehearsal, all I did was sit on the floor in between all the instruments, look around at what everyone was doing, and listen. I was finally with my friends who are also really passionate about music. I was happy and I felt safe. Over the next few days, Pete and I spoke about my project, and he was telling me stories of when he would be rehearsing with Jessie J and playing with Shaka Khan. And I thought to myself, these are the types of stories I want to be able to tell someday. I was so excited about all the things to come. I was going to go to Abbey Road Studios, record my song in the studio where they had the mixing panel which Prince recorded Diamonds and Pearls with, and make something I was proud of. I was genuinely happy. Everything was perfect and all set to pull this project off. Then, the COVID-19 pandemic happened. Isolation. London became an unsafe place. I left the UK within 2 hours and I couldn't even say goodbye to my friends. There was so much I didn't get to do. My biggest dream, my safe place, taken away from me in front of my eyes because of a virus. I was feeling stressed, angry, and sad. In the midst of my self-pity, I thought, how would this pandemic impact these children in war zones? Lockdown, isolation, and other restrictions imposed by governments because of the coronavirus pandemic make it even more difficult for children and their families to get access to basic needs, such as food and water. Due to these restrictions, the safety and well-being of these children and their families are even more at risk. Proper hygiene and social distancing is almost impossible to achieve in refugee camps. The organization War Child is doing their best to provide basic needs such as food and water, and they are also raising awareness about hygiene and social distancing in refugee camps and war zones through songs and videos. They are providing remote child protection, education, and psychological support for these children and their families. However, wars continue. The risk of a major coronavirus outbreak is not enough to make guns fall silent. Right now, I'm in Australia. I am safe, healthy, and even lucky enough to have found myself a job during these difficult times. I'm saving money for a ticket to return to London, record my song, finish my project, and hopefully make a difference to these children around the world. Let them be children again.